Hello. This is weird. I can't see anyone because I can talk to myself. I can't see how many people have joined. Wait until more people join. Hi everyone. We'll get started once there's more people that have joined us. Hello Vic. Hello swimsuit competition. Hello Atlanta. Hello Joe. So more people to join. I can't wait to answer your questions. I hope I can answer them as well as I can. I'll try to at least. You guys can also share the link so people can join. You guys can also share the link. Hi. My name is Sophie, and my pronouns are she, her, and I organised the Black Lives Matter protest in Colchester that happened 4 weeks ago now, I believe, and we have another one happening on Sunday. Um, I'd like to introduce Shuni, who's going to be like our host, I guess.
Hi everyone, welcome to Black Lives Matter Colchester virtual protest. You all know lots of different demonstrations for Black Lives Matter across the world, and thanks to Sophie and her amazing work, we're able to do some of this work locally. So I'm Shumi Chowdhury. My pronouns are she, her, they, and I'm a community and human rights activist and anti-racist educator. Colchester is really special to me. It's the place I went to university, and it's also a place where I'm a trustee for a local charity, and I'm really dedicated to see Black Lives Matter Colchester thrive and flourish, and to have our communities come together in support and solidarity, especially with Black people and communities locally. So like a massive thank you, Sophie, and the amazing group that you're working with, doing some amazing local activism. What I might take a little bit of time to do before I introduce our speakers is just set the scene of like what Sophie and I and the rest of our panelists would really like to get from this virtual protest, from this virtual session. And really, this is a solidarity space. It's a part of the global movement that is Black Lives Matter, and also a local movement that is Black Lives Matter. So whether it's a global or local scale, we're talking about the fact that Black Lives Matter. And when we say that, it's because they haven't mattered enough, right? And it's really important that we have this call. We're also saying that Black Lives Matter is a human rights call, and we're also saying that Black Lives Matter is a minimum call. It literally is the minimum requirement that people should matter, and Black lives should not be an exception to that. So we're hoping that this is a space that is respectful, that respects all forms of dignity, especially Black dignity, and that it's a space of healing. So we really hope that people can engage in the comments, that people engage in the conversation. We have an amazing panel lined up who will be sharing a wealth of expertise as well as lived experience. And we hope that right now what we're able to do is come together in a way that kind of respects and pays homage to the Black lives lost, both in the UK and abroad, as a result of structural racism. So what I'll be doing today is I'm just going to be chairing. I've got, like I said, a really great panel with us. We're going to be talking about issues that people are probably learning about quite recently, maybe the issues you already know about. But really for us, this is a space for us to come together. Do not worry if you don't understand everything. That's what the comment section is for. Please do ask us questions. We've got friends of the movement who are keeping an eye on the comments, and then we'll have the chance for you to ask them some questions to us later. So really what we're trying to do here is that have a discussion right here and in other spaces, highlight the fact that we've got demonstrations happening on Sunday, and you can see the little ticker at the bottom highlighting the Colchester demonstration that's going to take place at 11 a.m. On Sunday, and everybody's meeting at Lower Castle Park, and Sophie will be plugging that throughout the session today. So we really hope people can join. But the virtual protest is a chance for people who aren't able to join. Perhaps you're shielding, perhaps you are quite fearful about the pandemic that we're all living through right now, but you still still want to do something, and this is the place to feel like you are contributing something, and we'll give some actions and advice that will be able to help you to do things beyond the march, beyond the protest. So hopefully please do come here with a willingness to learn, a willingness to heal, and to work on creating a society that is anti-racist. So you already met her. Our first panelist is Sophie, and she leads and is the head organizer for Black Lives Matter Colchester. She's also really brainy because she's studying sociology and human rights at the University of Essex, and her activism actually landed her a spot on Amnesty International UK's Rise Up programme, bringing together young human rights defenders from across the country. So we are looking at one of our future leaders, and I would say one of our current leaders. So I definitely hope that we follow what Sophie's doing and leading by example in our community. I'm also delighted to have Lawerence Walker join us. Lawerence is a staple in East Anglia when it comes to the African Caribbean community. He is an American expatriate who has lived in East Anglia for over 25 years. And has previously been the secretary of the Ipswich Carribbean Association for 12 years, and is now the chair of Colchesterblack History Month. And he describes himself as an activist, and you'll see from the work that he's been doing in the local community that he's certainly that. And I would define Lawerence as an educator as well. And he'll be talking on why Black History Month is important, and why it's important that we teach a really holistic education to children and adults and communities across the UK in order to bring more communities together. We're also delighted to be joined by Nosa Imaghodo, and he is a PhD candidate at the University of Essex, and he's been doing his research since 2017 in the field of inequalities and social justice. He is going to be speaking to us today about everything from racism, structural racism, institutional racism, talking about anti-Blackness. And one of the incredible things he's doing at the moment with his research is bringing together Black British activists to examine how racism is reproduced in Britain, and the perspectives in terms of not just finding out what's going on, but also thinking about where we can find solutions to all forms of racism in Britain. And I'm hoping that we will later be joined by another panelist, Trudy Asante. Trudy and Sophie both recently featured on in an article by the Colchester Gazette, and Trudy spoke about her own experience growing up in Colchester and why she joined. Oh yay, hi Trudy, welcome. So Trudy joined the Black Lives Matter Colchester March last month, so we're hoping to talk to Trudy about why she felt it was important to join. Could I just ask whoever's got their mics on to mute them, so because I've got a bit of interference coming back. Great, thank you. Fab. So Trudy is studying a master's at the University of Warwick in media and communications, and has a background in marketing. So I'm really excited to welcome you all today. I'm hoping that we can have a really great discussion, and we'll be, like I said, keeping an eye on your comments, and we'll be giving a chance to have a Q&A. So I just want to start with Nosa. I think a lot of people are seeing what's happening globally, and some people might think it's something that's happening in America and outraged by what they're seeing. But obviously, you and what you're doing with your research is talking about the fact that racism is actually structural and all these other things. But what do we actually mean when we talk about racism or talk about structural racism?
Well, I think the concept of racism in itself is quite complicated because, it's something that has existed since, I think, I would say since 1492, when Columbus discovered America. But let's move forward to 2020 or the 21st century, and people, when we say racism, people think we mean hate, the hate from the KKK or the hate from the English Defence League or the hate from like Nazi Germany. No, that's a big difference. I think today that definition of racism has been reduced down to what we call individual racism. It's your own hate you have for people, and that is what people still think misconstrue as racism today. So no, in my simple definition and based on my research, I would say racism about the political and social power dynamics in a country. For example, in the UK, yeah, it's not about oh, this person thinks that black people are this. No, that's long gone. It's about a system of control. It's about how one a dominant group or uses power to dominate the other person. It's about how structures in society are used to advantage one group of people, mostly dominant group, and disadvantage other group of people. And this is what I think racism is today. But when you speak about things like institutional racism and structural racism, it becomes even more complicated, because sometimes when you actually for example, when you read a book and someone is speaking about institutional racism, and you read another book and someone is speaking about structural racism, you could easily say they're the same. But I think to differentiate it in the best way I can, I would say institutional racism are the little practices in institutions. For example, the easiest institution we can speak about that everyone knows institutionally racist is the police institution. So for example, stop and search and how cases are determined are usually done by racial profiling. That act itself is racist because it already beforehand deems that a black person or a brown person would commit a crime or is capable of committing such crime. And this is what institutional racism is. And it's not just the police, it's in the criminal justice system. And this time I mean the courts. It's also in our universities. It's also in the housing sector and also in the job market sector, And then when you speak about structural racism, then it becomes the overall umbrella. It becomes a culture. It's something that you couldn't even see anymore. It's become how things are, I would say, over time. They've been practiced over time, that it becomes a norm. And this is when it becomes structural. It means that the entire system of an institution was built that way. So this, in my opinion, is the difference between an institutional racism and structural racism. I would say structural has become more profound, more sophisticated that we don't see anymore. And this is what structural racism is.
So with your work with black activists across the UK, what have you found are like the key themes when you're talking about structural racism to them? And like, this is a really big question, but how do we dismantle it,
Well, I think the thing about structural racism, or let me use the word systemic racism, because systemic racism is like an umbrella term for both institutional and structural racism. So when in my research, because I've been speaking with black activists for across the UK, mostly in London, because I think it reflects the black UK population. And when I've been speaking with activists, I think everything boils down to slavery and colonialism, because this is where the problem itself started. So a lot of misconception that people hold, a lot of white people hold of black people, and how that misconception is then imbibed in our psyche of how we see black people, all stems from slavery and colonialism, So it's everything that has been taught from slavery and colonialism that becomes in a way institutionalized and becomes like a workplace culture. And so this is the problem, when you start to dismantle the idea that white is right, or culturally Western culture or white culture is better, or for example, society in the UK is better than maybe society in developing countries, and this is where the problem stems from. So it's this idea of superiority, this idea of whiteness being seen as right. I guess, like I said, white is right, and I think this is the problem. This is what we need to start dismantling. And this is what my data and people I've been speaking with have been saying.
And in your research, why is it that you focused on the black community, and where does anti-blackness come into this?
I think the reason why I focus on the Black community is because, first of all, I'm Black. I'm yeah, and I thought it would be best for because I believe experience is the best teacher, and I believe if people who experience a certain kind of racism, which I call anti-Black racism, could be the best people to say what the solutions to racism are. So, and then you go into the question of anti-Black racism, because if you ask a lot of participants, they will tell you, people I spoke with, they will tell you there is an hierarchy of how people are treated. There is a hierarchy of the kind of racism that being meted out to the different non-white people in society. And in my opinion, and based on my reading and based on the research I've done, Black people suffer the most. And this is why we have the slogan for this movement called Black Lives Matter, because when Black Lives Matter, all the lives will matter, because it feels like we are the bottom rungs of the society, and this is why I chose to focus on Black people. And this concept of anti-Blackness stems from Afrophobia. It comes from the fear of Black people, and when you imbibe that fear, when you take that fear into your side, then the way you treat Black people when they, for example, go to the hospital to ask for treatment becomes, different, And while I think on the whole spectrum, non-white people suffer extremely from racism, I think for Black people it's just worse. Let's take a look at the figures with COVID-19 and unemployment and housing discrimination and stop and search, and I mean, the list goes on. We can spend hours speaking about it. But I would say anti-Blackness comes from Afrophobia. It's a fear of Black people. It's a fear of Black culture. It's so many things, and it all stems from Afrophobia itself.
So right now what we're seeing is probably, definitely the first time in many people's lifetimes where people from across lots of different communities are coming forward and saying Black Lives Matter, participating in anti-racism or in all the struggle against racism in volumes that we just haven't seen before. So for people who aren't Black, and that includes the white community, but also non-Black people of color, and I know that you don't particularly like using terms like BAME and people of color, but so in terms of those communities, what do you think that they should be doing, or where do you think their starting point could potentially be in the anti-racist struggle?
Well, I think the starting point should be deciding to do something first, and after that, I think it's to remember that it's not about you. It's not really about you. It's about the fact that because I think there is a saying that says that you are strong as your weakest member, or strong as your weakest. If you're in a group, you're strong as the weakest person. So if we live in a society, you are as better as how you treat. The people who sleep on the street, So I think you should remember, first of all, it's not about you. You shouldn't try to get any sort of emotional or psychological comfort from it, Do it because you're willing to do it. But remember, I can only speak specifically to the white people that want to join, because, for example, when we speak about racism, one way to understand 21st century racism is that it's benefiting white people, The fact that when Black people earn less means that white people earn more. So if Black people are saying that I earn less than you, it's not specifically saying that you should give me your money or tell our boss to cut your salary and make it equal. It's more about challenging the system that you benefit from, So remember that it's not about you, but it's about the benefit you enjoy that your fellow, your colleague, for me put it simply like that, is not enjoying. So if we say whiteness or white supremacy, it's not specifically about your skin color. It's about those structures that I spoke of earlier. This is what that's what they are. So you should take yourself a little bit out of it, or I would say better stay have empathy, If I'm not having my full share of pie, why should you be having a full pie when we're both living and doing the same thing as exactly the same thing in the society? So I think that should be the first step for non-white people and non-black people. I think there is a lot that they can do, but they should remember that it's not a competition. You know, we shouldn't be pitted against each other, because at the end of the day, like I said, a lot of brown people in in the UK have experienced also colonialism and some sort of like indentured servitude, which, if you think about it in today's definitions, was also a little bit of like forced labor. So you should also realize that it's not really about competition, but it's about working together. So I think that should be this should be the first step for people who want to join that are not black.
Thank you so much, Nosa, because I think what you're able to have done just now is just set the scene for a lot of people who are probably starting to be part of this movement, want to take part in Black Lives Matter Colchester, be part of the protest and also the virtual protest. And the context that you've just given, I think, does the world of good. And one of the comments we've just seen from Victoria is saying Nosa's research could be a whole seminar. Who wants to see this at a later date? So we will definitely be probably getting back to you to have to learn more about what you're finding. But thank you so much for setting the scene. I'm going to bring Sophie in now, because kind of understanding it from the global and national context, understanding it within structural and institutional racism, which makes this kind of systemic racism that Nosa's talking about, in terms of the fact that this is a really complex issue and stuff like that. What was it that made you feel like, you know what, we need this in the local context as well, and we need a Black Lives Matter branch in Colchester? What kind of really motivated you to do that?
I think it's when people speak about racism, I think it doesn't happen here, and I think it's a problem elsewhere. And that's what I've come to learn. When you tell a white person you're being racist, like, am I? That's crazy. Like, you even question what I'm saying to you. But I sort of got inspiration from seeing the girls that organised the London protest, and they inspired me. And watching the protest in America break out on TV, that inspired me as well, because my parents moved from Tanzania to England, but they could have moved from Tanzania to America. That could have been me. It could have been my brother that was shot. It could have been my dad that was shot. And obviously I'm in a better situation where that's not the case. But I still experience racism, and that I have to fight for it. I don't want to live in a world where my niece and my nephew are like outcast and co-invested. How long does this have to go on?
And what have you found in terms of like people that have come together to help you with organising, and the people that took part in the march last month? Like, what do you think like are the highlights of being able to do this locally? And on the flip side, what have you found has been a struggle for you starting this local movement and organising so many people to take action?
Honestly, organising it was amazing. I think I received like over thousands of messages. How can I help you? Is there anything I can do to help? Everyone just wanted to help. And I think for every 10 good comments we got, there was just one really horrible comment. And that's what would be like, why am I doing this? But in the end, you just have to go, no, I don't even care. There's people making fake accounts to tell me White Lives Matter. And I'm just like, go away. Just educate yourself, read a book and understand. I don't think I've ever said white lives don't matter. I'm just saying right now, Black Lives Matter. Use your privilege and help me. All my friends are white and they all understand how important it is, and they're great allies. I couldn't have done this without them.
I think one of the things that I've noticed since kind of getting involved with Black Lives Matter Colchester as well is the diversity in the group, and just how many young white people are getting involved and supporting you. And you're the leader that we all want, but everybody's there to kind of lift you up and see and see Black Lives Matter thrive locally. So do you want to share some of the ways that people can support Black Lives Matter Colchester, what things they can attend, how they can show support and solidarity?
So we have a protest on Sunday, 11 a.m. Lower Castle Park and Doe meeting. If you can't come, donate. There's a donation on our Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. share our posts, and we hope to do like monthly webinars. So this isn't just like a one-time thing. This will be a thing that always happens.
So we've got the PayPal donate. We're gonna leave that on the screen for a little bit so people can take note, and definitely support Black Lives Matter. And in terms of like going forward, what do you hope that you can achieve within the local community in Colchester? Like what things for you would make you feel like we're on the right track, we're heading towards success?
So after the protest, I had loads of people tell me when they went to school in Colchester, they had racist teachers. I think there's a Twitter page that has exposed loads of racist teachers in Colchester, which is so messed up. Having teachers taught or not taught, I don't know what word to use, basically being held accountable for being racist. Lots of people also said they've been searched. That's something that could be amazing to be like worked on as well.
Fantastic. So we really want to be able to engage institutions like education, policing in this work, and I think that really is such an excellent segue to bring Lawerence into this discussion. I already mentioned that Lawerence has been taking part in the Ipswich Carribbean Association, as well as the chair for Colchesterblack History Month. So I think one of the things that's really key right now is we're seeing education as a key call to action now, but we only really have October as the month that we're supposed to celebrate all of that is Black history. So why do you think Black History Month is important, and where do you want to see it kind of go locally, but also on a kind of broader level as well? We're having a few audio problems with
to be able to tell or do anything that is significant. Oh, really? Wonder what that might be.
We can hear you now. Go ahead, Lawerence.
I don't know. But then it takes us there. Okay, it takes us there. I mean, after listening to Nosa, I can't help but want to say something about racism, and I'll just make a small point, because if we get to it, I will make another point about racism in the talk. It began with European colonization. It was the greatest free labor enterprise ever invented in business. And the thought of how that has expanded the world that we know today is something that I want to help people understand as well, because there are some issues. Because racism and racist behavior are two different things. The idea of personal issues that people suffer usually is from racist behavior. But racism, hopefully I'll get to that in a minute. But let me tell you about Black History Month. First, let me point out the idea of what I hope to achieve with what we're doing with Black History Month. And that is a greater awareness of the issues of Black people here in Colchester. With racism and racist behavior, bigotry, and mass European migration into the United Kingdom, it has become imperative that we embrace and celebrate the cultures of our history and the contributions to make this country great. Other is the root of all that is wrong with this world. A greater awareness and an interaction with African and Caribbean life in Colchester is even more important now if we are to eliminate the types of hatred from our society and our communities. Black History Month in Colchester, we aim to help provide a more positive and a more progressive image that can aspire and encourage young people and adults alike. The idea of getting more involvement with those people who can help and support and bring other people within the program so that we can do this work here in Colchester. This year's program, Black History Month 2020, and our sponsors, we're going to strive to acknowledge and celebrate many of the cultures of the Black and Asian minority ethnic communities and its people in Colchester and with the outstanding lineup and of live shows. We've got a lot of good stuff going on for this year, and hopefully October will come around and we'll be able to get together and we'll be able to do a number of these things. I mean, within the program, we have open talks and we have discussion topics about race, racism, race equality, and especially inequality. We've got plans for a diversity seminar. And within that diversity seminar, it's not Black History Month that are delivering the diversity seminar. What we anticipate is it's going to be a group of diversity officers working. Those people can talk to each other about what they reach their goal in diversity within their organizations. And hopefully within that, there will be those people who will pick up some good ideas, and there will be those who can offer some good ideas. So this is not for the general public. This is not for an audience to come and be entertained. This is to get people together who are doing this work, because there are stories about diversity officers often struggle to do their job because it's not the only job they have within the organization. A lot of organizations does not have a dedicated officer to be able to do that type of work. So within all this, the idea of being able to achieve this greater awareness with Black History Month and being able to bring this in, what we're anticipating is that as we came out of last year, we went into November, December, January, and we had some programs in February, and then the pandemic blew up and just took all that opportunity away from us. However, we're hoping to keep that momentum strong as we go into the end of this year. I'll stop there.
So it sounds like you're already doing lots of stuff, not just within this 1 month that everyone kind of shifts their focus towards. I know corporations, schools, all sorts of places will wait for October to kind of do any content on communities of colour. And already we're seeing comments coming in around the school curriculum. And there are more and more calls for decolonising the curriculum, having more representative history be taught in those spaces. And what do you think we need to do within the curriculum within schools, but also within community education, to kind of bring a more nuanced version of history we're already taught, and then newer parts of history that we just don't get taught because due to like erasure of Black history, for example?
Bede's comment there. She's absolutely right. The education system needs to be overhauled. We have been doing it this same way for all these hundreds of years, lining students up in a classroom, and they're being taught white teacher, usually female, who has other issues that she's trying to solve other than her teaching plan. And of course, it is usually overwhelming for those persons who are doing that work. I'm aware of a couple of teachers who just last year, they got out of teaching because of the difficulties that they were having within the school and the system that they were working in. Now, when we talk about decolonizing, that history is a history of white supremacy. And there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from that. So I wouldn't think that would take all of that out. However, it needs to be restructured so that it is delivered to young people and adults alike in a way that they have a better understanding of the inclusiveness of other people, other nations, and the things that they were able to achieve. The story needs to be told so that we can have a better understanding of how our society was built and the idea of the world that we enjoy today. And there are a lot of us who do enjoy society the way it is today. There's some advantages. Even with what's happening now, there are advantages. In my reading, there are people like us who this is an opportunity for us to create something in our lives because this is happening. So in a way, we're benefiting from this as well. but at the same time, we are addressing the issue, which is what we want to try to achieve. We want to be able to address the issue. Now, my on the curriculum, it needs to be structured to tell a greater truth and an explanation of the hows and whys. As I just pointed out in racism began with the European colonizations of all these other black countries. And it wasn't that they went in and said, okay, let's beat the black guys. No, they went in and said, all of this is here. How can we get it? And they created a system and a structure that still lives today. Racism is alive. Racism is a noun. Racism is a thing that's going to be with us for a long time. And what we need to do is we need to do a better job at dealing with the symptoms of racism. And a lot of those symptoms, I'll go a little further. The National British Society on Mental Health lists racism as the #1 cause for issues of mental health in Black men. The #1 cause. So that in itself creates an opportunity for us to be able to look at that symptom of racism and look at how we can address that. It is a question of how much work are we willing to do? Hopefully, as we go on, I'll get into that a little bit as well. The amount of work that is there for us to do and how we can get into that work. Yes.
So my last question to you, Lawerence, before I move on to Trudy, is you've been doing this work evidently for many years within East Anglia, but what is it that you hope that we can achieve through in Colchester with Black Lives Matter? And what's like the thing you'd really like to see happen?
Oh, wow. Black Lives Matters, the movement in Colchester, has brought about a gigantic opportunity for all of us to take a good look at ourselves. Not as a race of people, not as black and white, but as people. People with the same dreams, desires, and aspirations as each other. The Black Lives Matter movement in Colchester has caused an awakening, not only in Black people, but in all people, Black and whites and non-whites. The Black Lives Matter movement, it has created a greater awareness of the needs of the Black and Asian minority ethnic people and its communities, and the opportunity for them to express their concerns, which is a big issue because that has been something that we've worked on in a variety of different seminars and conferences to be able to get people to address the concerns of the Black and ethnic minority communities. And this movement has brought about a lot of that. Now, what we hope to do is to continue with this momentum. We want to use it to capitalize on the involvement of local government and other statutory authorities to support the work of the Black and Asian minority ethnic communities, to get more involved in the things that we feel we need that are made of. They know the system is institutionally racist. Of those traditions have been developed, they're not racist, and they'll tell you that to their face. I'm not racist. However, I do have some Black friends, and that is not really doing anything. It is getting them involved in stuff, and that's what we need to do with this opportunity right here, is to get more people involved because they are now aware that there is an issue that needs to be addressed. In Colchester alone, there are a number of organizations that we're working with now in Black History Month and through African families in the UK to be able to do more for our communities. And that's what needs to be recognized. That's what needs to be recognized. Hopefully we'll have another chat and I'll give you more on the idea of the do more, because there are a number of organizations that have been awakened with what we have been doing here now and what has passed in the past few weeks. And this is going way beyond George Floyd. It is so unfortunate. At the same time, it is an opportunity for us to represent, and we need to take advantage of that opportunity. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Lawerence. There's a little bit of a problem with your Wi-Fi, but we did manage to catch most, if not all, of what you said. And there's lots of stuff in the comments co-signing what you've said about the education system, and we'll probably see more questions come up about that. I'm going to bring Trudy in now. Thank you so much, Trudy, for joining. Reading the Colchester Gazette article, one of the things that really struck me was what motivated you to join the march last month, and why personally for you Black Lives Matter is so important.
Finding out that the protest in Colchester in the first place was just like, obviously Colchester is like a white dominated town, so for me to even see that on social media, I was just like, I'm definitely going to the protest. So I think that it's quite important to allow Black people to actually voice what they're going through. We see this all the time, but point where enough is enough. We've gone through this, we've had all of this. So that was my main thing, like seeing it on social media constantly. It's not being portrayed in the media, for example, like newspapers and all these news channels as a good thing. They're portraying it as a bad thing for us to protest and voice our opinions. But I just believe that it was powerful to actually have your voice, or all these people's voices being in a protest.
And how did it feel for you actually being there with so many people?
Can you guys
responding?
Sorry, I didn't catch that last bit.
How did it feel when you actually joined and saw that there were so many people that joined the march with you? Like, what does that do for you, and what are you hoping that Sunday's march can do as well for bringing Black voices together?
It just proved to me that people are actually able to stand with you and show support for a cause like this. It was actually an amazing feeling to see so many people turn up, show their support for Black Lives Matter. It just felt like people were actually there to, prove and be a change, try and change society's views.
And with growing up in Colchester, you already mentioned it's a really white dominated town. What would you like to see the role of Black Lives Matter kind of moving into the future, and how could it be different from your experiences that you mentioned in the article?
I hope that Black Lives Matter, within Colchester, just changes people's viewpoints and I guess not the behavior, but the way they treat other Black people. Not maybe how do I explain it? Not in the sense of right there in front of you, but the viewpoints. It's little things that a lot of people probably would understand this. It's little things that certain people do that is not right, but you just accept it, and you don't blame at all. I just feel like, I can walk down the street, no one's looking at me thinking about, there's a Black girl here, or if I'm applying for a job, they're seeing an application, or Black person this. I hope that the protest itself, us doing this, just brings unity.
I think that's one of the things that really struck me with what Nosa was saying as well, the fact that there is those individual kind of experiences that we have within institutions like jobs and things like that. Do you feel like going through education, going through workplace and stuff like that makes that there's this additional struggle because you're Black and because you're a woman?
Yeah, definitely.
So one of the things that I'm going to be asking all the panelists, and I'm going to start with you, Trudy, if that's okay. You can take a few seconds to think about the answer and stuff, is the whole thing around one of the responses that has come out of the march. And like you already mentioned, lots of people are kind of negatively portraying the march and things like that, and saying actually like racism isn't a problem anymore and that racism isn't a problem in Colchester. How would you respond to people saying something like that?
Those people that are saying that have not experienced racism, if they had experienced racism, they wouldn't be saying that. I mean, like I said in the article, it's not in your face, but it's there. So it needs to be changed. The society's viewpoints of racism needs to be changed.
And Nosa, I want to bring that question to you as well, in terms of how do we as a movement answer the questions like that when people are completely blind to it? And it truly makes the point of the fact that it's because they haven't experienced it, and that's privilege at the end of the day. But what do we do when people are saying racism isn't an issue anymore and it's not an issue in Colchester? Sorry, I think you might be muted, Nosa.
I think that question is the single biggest issue about racism today. You know, it's a lot of people saying racism doesn't exist. But to be honest, I don't know how you can make those people see it. You know, I don't know how you can make someone who is obviously seeing blue say that that's black. You know, they have to experience it themselves. You know, or they have to be educated. You know, to understand that. Something is racist, you know, and I think the problem is because they're not listening, you know, and I also think that they're not woke, because I think it's not only black people that can be woke. There are white people that are woke as well, you know, and I think it's just difficult to try and make these people who say racism doesn't exist. I think it's very difficult to try and make them see it. To be honest, I think yeah. For example, I can speak from personal experience. You know, I have a friend who said I was colorblind. You know, and let's not go into the conversation of how problematic colorblindness is. And what I did was I started to explain things about passive aggressiveness. You know, about asking questions like, where do you come from, or really where do your grandparents come from, or can you speak English, or where did you learn how to speak English, you know, and explaining how people look at you on the street, how you're invincible but at the same time so visible, you know. And also I bought books for my friend, you know, to read, to understand that there is such a thing called racism in the 21st century. That doesn't really necessarily mean someone has a swastika as a tattoo, no. So I think with people like that, it's quite a lot of work, and I think usually they need to be in contact, in close personal contact with black people who are really experiencing racism. I think that's one way to make them see it, or make them understand that there is racism in the 21st century. It's a lot of work, but yeah,
absolutely,
some people worth it.
And Sophie, how have you responded to those comments? Because I know, like, whilst you had like this immense support for the movement, and like the group has got like over 500 people in the Facebook group and stuff like that, but you've also been seeing comments from people saying that this isn't an issue in Colchester. Like, how have you responded to that? I think you're muted too, darling.
Yes. So when I see comments like that, I always start typing, and I'm like, why am I even wasting my time? Like, you're choosing to be ignorant. Like, if someone tells you they got hit by a bus, you're not going to be like, no, you didn't. Like, why are you trying to counter-argue my experience and my feelings? And I'm not, like, I don't have time to write out paragraphs to explain to people. And I've been so lucky that the people I surround myself with are educated and want to learn more. So, like, I don't have that problem, but yeah, it's hard.
And do you think we should be engaging with those people? Because I remember, like, one of the things that Nosa was saying was like, there's just some people you can't really that, you know, just not far along enough on the journey, and there's some people who are dedicated to it. I'm also conscious that it really puts a lot of burden on people of color, especially Black people, to kind of constantly educate and stuff like that. So like one of the things that we've got lots of people kind of saying, so I'm just going to read Isla's comment around having difficult conversations with family members and random people on the internet has been a theme of the last couple of weeks. I stay calm, but it's so hard. How do we get people to educate themselves? And I think one of the things I want to add to that is the fact that it depends on, it feels like a lot of the burden is falling on Black people to do their educating, and that's quite exhausting. So like what should people be doing, and where should people be going?
So I feel as a Black person, it's not my job to educate white people. Like, use Amazon Prime and order a book and read. Like, literally just read. It's not that hard. But yeah, what I've got the question was, what else was the question?
So it's also almost like Google is your friend kind of thing. Like, before asking your Black friend.
Yeah. And I think there's like a difference between like, you like educate yourself, and once you don't know what you've read, you then ask for more help, instead of just being ignorant.
Absolutely. And in terms of another part of that conversation, I'm going to bring that to you, Lawerence. A lot of people are talking about the difficult conversations they're having with family, and also people on the internet and things like that.
All right.
In terms of advice and how to navigate those conversations, what have you found in your experience that people are coming to you and you're doing things like Black History Month and things like this? Around conversation.
Okay. Before I go into how I would deal with the claim that racism isn't an issue in Colchester, I'll address that. Having those conversations are sometimes hard and awkward, but it is a persistence of the individual who needs answers and the support of the family. I'm aware of a family who has mixed children in the family, and dad is racist. He can't help himself. It's just how he was brought up, and this is how he feels about coons. I then had to intervene in the conversation when he said the word coon. And in doing that, it was a question of assaulting him with words, but making him extremely aware of the offensiveness of using those words, and using those words around people of color creates a discomfort. And within that discomfort, it creates an exclusion, whether it's you being excluded or whether they're excluding themselves from you. And within the family, it creates divisions that are sometimes awkward and hard to mend. So the conversation does need to come out, and the understanding does need to come out. Seeing this in families with mixed children, I try to avoid using the word mixed race because it's uncomfortable for me as well. But softly, but because there are people who have their own opinion, then giving them an opportunity to be aware of something that you think may be helpful for them, and then encouraging them. A lot of times what I will say in the talks that I do is, you don't have to believe me. Look it up for yourself. And if I'm doing a PowerPoint, I'll flash a couple of websites online so that people can see what that is. But that tends to work for me. Now, I'll get to the question. Dealing with claims that racism, there is that area of understanding racism. And in listening to Nosa, there were a lot of really good points that you hit on within your talk there, Nosa. And the idea of giving people an opportunity to have a better understanding of what racism and racist behavior is, because they're two different things. And yes, racism does exist in Colchester. Surely there are people in Colchester who have racist views and they express them openly. And we have systems in place in Colchester to address these incidents when we are made aware of them. And that is one of the things that is a real key. People have to report. We need to be aware when things like this are happening so that something can happen with it. We've got lots of support with a number of organizations. The Independent Advisors Group to the Police, we're working on a reporting system there that seems to be working really well. Now, we're still witnessing and experiencing struggles of oppression, discrimination, marginalization, and racist behavior. And racist behavior in Colchester because racism is a global system of control of all the economic, financial, and social behavior. It's here. They started this when the Europeans started to colonize the rest of the world, and they encountered us. They encountered Black people. We were a peaceful nation of people, and they took advantage of us. And there is that thing where racism will continue to be a part of this system. Systems of support to address the symptoms of racism need to be greater developed through direct symptom of racism. There is a greater need to help more people adapt a different way of addressing this issue. And therefore, any work that we're doing, any efforts or projects that we are trying to put together or are putting together that could offer a solution, they should be embraced. They should be embraced by all of the directors who have an organization of more than 20 people and they have an equal opportunities policy. They should be supported in a way where they can help us to develop a more inclusive society. Now, in dealing with racism in Colchester, there was a good point that you made earlier about Colchester being a white town. And truly it is. I'm doing some work with the museum, and it was very good to hear the museum explain how they are a colonial museum. The idea of what they display in there is about white Colchester. This momentum that we have now is we're going to help them change some of those things and represent Black people here in Colchester, represent Black people in the history of Colchester, going into the opportunity to be able to create those opportunities to help people learn. There will be ignorant people who will resist. There will be. And what we hopefully will be able to do is to do more work to be able to help more people have a better understanding of what we're trying to do. It's not about race relations anymore. This is about society and people in society together, and the momentum is going to help a lot of the smaller organizations, the companies of the nonprofit organizations that are doing so much work and getting very little gratitude for it. Mm-hmm. It's going to help us do a lot more work. And that's one of the things that we can hopefully rely on with what has happened today and what was.
Thanks, Lawerence. I'm going to bring Sophie.
Did I get enough in?
Trudy, you got lots in. I'm going to be bringing Sophie and Trudy in on the question that's been appearing on the screen. So Kyle was asking around how challenging it's been to organise Black Lives Matter in Colchester, and how communities can help, which has been brought into the question around how can the non-Black community, and we're talking both white and non-Black people of colour, being able to support the BLM movement in Colchester. So if I could ask Sophie and Trudy around what they think they'd like to see from, because both of you grew up in Colchester and are in the community right now, what do you want to see from your local community who aren't Black in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement, and what kind of support that they can give?
I would like to see just little things, just for example, supporting anything that's going on. For example, there's been a few events that Black people have held that have been like cultural events, like support those so that people are aware of those events, that they can attend these events, sign up to all the petitions. I think just start small and then work your way up. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Trudy. Sophie?
Yeah, I agree with Trudy, like signing petitions and supporting Black businesses in Colchester. Yeah, just it's small things.
And we've also got scrolling at the bottom around like how you can stay updated on those events, that the events that Black Lives Matter will be doing by signing up to the Black Lives Matter Colchester Facebook page. And we've also got the stuff around how to donate as well, because actually like this stuff, like Lawerence was mentioning, needs funding. It needs to be resourced. For anything to keep going, we need to really need to resource work to make sure that it can happen. And I really hope that locally, all of us who can support Black Lives Matter Colchester can really, you know, put our money where our mouths are and support the work, so that is something that's long term in our community. I'm just really going to read the question from Victoria, which is if you could ask Will Quince, the MP of Colchester, anything, what would it be? I'm aware he has been sending generic templates in response to letters sent concerning racism in Colchester. So I'm going to ask that to you, Sophie, first, and then if anybody else wants to follow up on that. So if you could ask Will Quince, our MP, anything, what would it be?
I don't know what I would ask him, but I've sort of picked up on his horrible behaviour, let's say. I was looking through his voting history, and he voted against NHS and key workers being tested for coronavirus. Strange. And then leading up to the protest, he messaged me and told me to not have the protest and that it's wrong. But the Labour Party were really supporting, and so were the Green Party. So I would just ask him why he didn't attend the protest and why he told me not to have the protest.
Was any explanation given to why our local MP was asking for freedom of association not to happen and freedom of assembly not to happen? Did he give any reason for it?
No.
And Trudy, being somebody who's in Colchester, what would you want to see from our local MP? Already knowing that what Sophie's just shared isn't hugely promising, but it's a wish list, and all of us will say amen. So it can happen. But what would you like to see from Will Quince, our MP, in terms of Black Lives Matter? Trudy, sorry, I don't know if could you hear what I said?
No, hello. It was being a bit slow, sorry.
It's fine. So same question to you in terms of what would you like to see from the local MP in Colchester in terms of Black Lives Matter?
I think just to show support. If not physically, show support. Maybe voice your support on social media so people look up to him and follow suit as well. People tend to listen to leaders, so if he could show support and be an example to everyone else, then yeah, that should work. Something small, but gotta start from small to get to big changes.
Absolutely. Well, I hope that if Lawerence, if you are seeing this, I've met you before. I really hope that you can come up with the courage to say that Black Lives Matter and that more can be done locally in our community to make sure that Black communities feel supported. I'm going to go on to some questions that we had prior to the event. While we wait for more questions to come in, somebody asked us around what our thoughts were on reforming the system to improve equality for Black people. Is it better to be within, or is it better to pressure from outside? So Nosa, if you don't mind answering that one. So what is better for us in terms of trying to get Black dignity and Black equality? Is it better to be within the system or outside the system to try and work towards change?
Oh my God, that's a difficult one. I think, yeah, in the last couple of years, what we've been doing is we've been trying to get dignity and get equality and equity from within and outside the system. You know, we've become Black people, other non-white and Black people. We've become members of parliament. We've become doctors. We've become nurses, and we've helped build this country. We're part of the system. You know, so to say that there is something different we can do, I just think that we need to keep on resisting, and I think the only way to do it is inside these institutions and inside the system, because I mean, there's no other place to go. You know, so yeah, I think within is better than actually from exterior. So yeah.
And do you think it's whether there's all these barriers trying to get inside, like to get into leadership positions in companies and organizations, or even when you look at Essex University, the number of Black professors, I mean, the figures from 2015 were really, really, really poor. I don't think they've done it again because it was so embarrassing for the university. And that's my alma mater. So I say this with absolute grace. But we have a problem with like representation. So what do we do when representation doesn't exist for us to be inside and pressure, and therefore we're only really left to being outside? I don't expect you to know the answer. I'm just like,
absolutely. I don't know the answer. So whatever I'm saying right now is just a suggestion. I think that we cannot beat the system from outside. I don't think that's possible. You know, I think if we stay outside the system, we get even more excluded. You know. So I think the best thing is to start holding people accountable, you know, start naming and shaming and calling people out. You know, for example, I would say if you didn't get a promotion or something, then I think there should be a platform for you to say that, oh, I didn't get a promotion because I was Black, and even though I was better and I had more qualification, I've worked more hard than my colleague, and my colleague who is probably white got the promotion, then I think there should be an avenue for people to name and shame people, and also for people to be held accountable. You know, I think one of the things that is missing in the UK in order to tackle and eradicate racism is the inability for laws and platform where people could be held accountable, and I think that's the problem. You know, so I think accountability can go a long way, and I think that's the only way. Yeah, that's probably one of the ways to go.
So I have a final question for all the panelists, and if we could keep your answer to 1 minute, that would be great. But knowing that Black Lives Matter right now is having this whirlwind of support, and we really want to keep up with the momentum, like Lawerence mentioned, what do you envisage this movement will be in 2030? Like, what's the world we want to see? But also, do you think we'll still be talking about this in 2030? So I'm going to come to Sophie first, if that's okay. So yeah, what do you think we'll still be talking about this in 2030, seeing how much momentum is growing around this issue? You're on mute again, darling.
Sorry. So I think in an ideal world, in like a euphoria world, we'd all be equal. Not equal as such, but we'd look back at this and be like, I can't think people were ever racist. And growing up, I realised in school you're sort of taught racism does no longer exist. You're taught about Martin Luther King, you're taught about Rosa Parks, and it's sort of under this impression that racism is no longer a thing until you grow up and you actually go out into the world and realise, like, actually, hold on, wait a minute, like, I've been lied to. And I think hopefully in 2030, that's not the case. We sort of look back at this movement and it's like, we did it. And it was good.
I hope so too. Lawerence, I'm going to bring the same question to you. Do you think we'll still be talking about this in 2030?
I'm still muted.
No, you can hear.
There we go. I'm in. Yes, we definitely will be talking about this. Yes, we definitely will be talking about this in years to come. What I anticipate is that we will be in a situation where the summer of 2020 has set a milestone. We'll be able to look back on issues as we move toward 2030, and we'll be able to say to local authorities, businesses, organizations, and other people, no, we can't do that because in these decisions were made. These actions were put in place in 2020 so that we could then deal with a lot of these issues that we're struggling with now. With a lot of the things that I try to do, I have a program that a presentation that I do, and the presentation starts with, did your teachers lie to you? Because a lot of history of Black people has been known to the early 30s. So not putting that in the curriculum, and this is Black people who were born, who lived here in the United Kingdom. People knew about this. They knew about Beachy Head Woman. They didn't tell anybody about it. It wasn't a part of the curriculum. It was part of a system of education that would benefit the few or the majority of the students that they were trying to educate, such as in a lot of you. So I remember as a child attending a training school because there was no school for Blacks. There was no elementary school. There was no nursery school. So at 5 years old, I had to go to what was called a training school. Now, within those stages, I watched my education as it progressed, and we still see that same format today. Within 30 years, we would have certainly have moved away from what we see now as traditional teaching. And what I would like to see is that this movement is a part of what helps us do that, move away from what we see as traditional teaching with 20 kids, sometimes 30, in a classroom trying to be taught by usually a young white woman. And in being so, grown up in, not because they're mean kids, it's because they have issues, whether they're mental issues, social issues, psychological issues. Those young men have those issues. It is frightening for a 25-year-old, 5'6" white Black child. So those things need to be readdressed so that better opportunities become more possible. As parents, you've probably noticed, or some of us are as parents, we've probably noticed exclusion rates have increased dramatically. Most of those who are excluded are Black males. This is because fear of a large Black child who I can no longer discipline. The law says I cannot discipline him. So those are things that will have to change. And as we move into the, the 23rd century, we hope to be able to see that the work that we're doing now has caused a dynamic change, because that's what we're going to need right now. We're going to need something dynamic to occur so that it makes a very strong impact, not only on education, but on diversity itself, so that those people who are doing that work can do a better job at that work and create greater opportunities. When we mention the idea of what do Black people want, in my opinion, Black people want an opportunity to be given the same chance to have the life that they choose. If they choose to be rich, they should have the same chance to be able to achieve that. If they choose to enjoy that. I see myself as being privileged living here in the UK, because I am in a position now where I can address some of the issues that I'm aware of, and I am seeing happen to young Black men and women.
So thank you, Lawerence. I'm going to take that question.
I want to do something about it. If it means, being able to do a seminar to someone, okay, I'll stop.
We've got a bit of a delay, I think, still. So I'm going to take the question to Trudy as well. What do you think we'll still be talking about this in 2030, Trudy? Still be discussing this issue?
Yes.
Sorry, Trudy, you just need to unmute your mic.
Hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think, we'll definitely be talking about this. So even if you look at history, it's taken years for Black people to even get to this point that we are at now. So unless we educate ourselves and educate the future generations, this will still be something that we'll be discussing. There may be better changes than the current situation, but we will definitely still be talking about this.
I hope we're in a better situation in those 10 years, but I think I'm definitely inclined to agree with you. And Nosa, I'm gonna let you finish by answering the same question. Do you still think we'll be still talking about this in 2030, or will your research change all of that for us?
I hope my research can change all of that, but I think that the fear in 2030 is that racism doesn't change, because the racism of the 1960s is not the racism of today. It's literally changed. The way society has obviously changed. So I think definitely we'll still be talking about racism in society in 2030. I hope that 2020 today, this last couple of weeks have set a good precedent for a different kind of conversation, But my fear is that we might still be talking about it, because I fear racism might change in its dynamics. So that is something I think our conversation should also be about, sort of anticipating how racism might change. So yeah.
I just want to say thank you so much to everybody that's joined and to this amazing panel. You've given such a great depth and breadth in giving people the chance to understand why Black Lives Matter is important and why it's important to take part in in this virtual protest. So thank you, and I hope everyone in the comments can give them a round of applause. And I just want to also thank our people who have been in the background looking through your comments, helping us with the organizing of this event. So I'm going to bring in Kazim and Ben so you can see them and they can say hello, and just to say thank you so much for your support and taking care of all the comments and all the things that have been happening. But it really does take a tribe to get this kind of stuff happening, and I really hope that those of you who are tuning in today really support Sophie and all of those at Black Lives Matter Colchester with this work. I'm going to hand over to Sophie, who's going to be plugging the protests that are coming up and other ways that you can get involved. So over to you, Sophie. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. So yeah, if you come to the protest on Sunday, that would be amazing. We're going to march through town. We have speeches in Lower Castle Park, 11 till 12:30, and then we're going to march from 12:30 onwards. And then, yeah, you can donate. The link is at the bottom. Follow our pages. Yeah, thank you so much.